What up, dudes, and welcome back to the Yo Video Games Podcast Side Quest, where we take a topic that we didn't have time to cover in the main episodes, or we take a question from you guys and we answer it here as best we can.
Yeah, and we're finally doing what James asked, is we're just ranking butts, all butts, every butt we see. It's just sort of off the top of our head, who has the best butt, and we're just going to go from there from,
Really
1 to 1 million.
resurrecting that old G4 era, segments.
We're
Of course,
bringing it back.
we'll do all butts, though.
Every butt. Yeah, Ron Swanson's butt, it's happening. And I'm in the perfect attire to resurrect the G4 era. I was working. Yeah, actually, this is going to fully paint a picture for you. I was working on my car in jean cutoffs and a cutoff shirt, and then I ate some pepperoni and I fell asleep.
Andrew's living his life a quarter mile at a time, or whatever.
I am Vin Diesel. I'm Vin Diesel. Do you think he gets pepperoni sleeps? Old man pepperoni. But no, today we have a question from TheSchmidtOne. To paraphrase, what is your guilty pleasure game mechanic or activity in a video game that you would base an indie game around? Does this game already exist for you? The context being that we asked about indie games you'd like to see, or like, that you love. And he's saying that, indie games really excel at creating short and concise gaming experiences, essentially around a single mechanic. For him, his guilty pleasure is fishing games, fishing mini games. It's just simple, but he always gets engaged. He enjoys it. It's a good time for him. I think there's like an entire Zelda game that you can forget everything else except the fishing and have a great time. So
yeah. So he's talking about that's kind of like almost a side mechanic, really, or like a part of a game that was just so well done, and it's just like I just want a whole game based around that. And high profile, I don't know if it was, I doubt it was planned this way, but doesn't it feel like Assassin's Creed kind of really took the boat sailing segments from 3 and really ran with it in 4?
Oh, hell yeah. Well, I mean, even in Odyssey.
Yeah, and that's not taking a game mechanic and then basing a whole game around it. That's just sort of like pivoting towards the thing people really liked in the last game. It's still a full ass game with all the other mechanics on top of it.
He gives an example of a game called Dredge that recently came out, and at the surface it's a game about fishing and a flavor of eldritch horror on the side, which, I mean, that sounds insane. But the fishing itself is based around a simple time-based rhythm-like mini game. It's simplistic but very engaging. So I mean, I guess he sort of found his indie crack game. I don't know what my mechanic would be. There's a lot of mechanics that I really love, but I don't know if there's indie games necessarily that would be based all around it. Like, I like a stealth mechanic when it's done well. And RE4 Remake is obviously a perfect example of something including a mechanic that gets me. I love being able to have the option to sneak up and, kill him. Yeah. Manhunt was like one of the first games where I was like, yes. And I was too young to play that game.
For me, I really like pairing or like, I like
it when they're satisfying.
Yeah, I like something that's like a defensive mechanic that feels offensive or feels like you're kind of gives you that sort of like I'm outsmarting you.
Well, it gives you an edge in the game that makes it feel like it's skill based. It's a skill based edge.
Yeah, because it's like I like it when the enemy's doing something and I counter it. Like countering mechanics to me feel really good. However, countering mechanics are actually shockingly, I find seem to be very difficult for a lot of developers to handle. This is going to be a bit of a tangent, but it's like I beat Burning Shores recently. And again, it's one of those things where I'm like, I like everything about this game, but the combat fucking sucks. And the further Guerrilla Games strays from God's light, of platinum combat, the worse it gets. What I'm saying is, like, the more good games with good real-time combat come out, the harder and more annoying it is to play the game, because it's like, it's not even that it's necessarily bad, but it is a game that, like, you're shooting bows and arrows at giant mechanical dinosaurs. Well, now frogs that are Frogs are very poorly designed in that game in Burning Shore. I don't even. If you like the combat, the frogs are still poorly designed.
Well, that's not an endorsement for me getting that game. I was looking at getting that this
so
weekend.
much of it is actually, it's only like $20. It's so much of it is good, and there are really good. There's a lot of, and it's got, it's good fun story, all kinds of good fun stuff in the game. But fuck, combat sucks still.
I didn't
like
have a problem with combat.
there's
in that
so
game.
many fucking aerial enemies too in Burning Shores. At least they give you a gun finally, but like, but yeah, it's one of those things where okay, even smaller titles like Samurai Jack, and Valkyrie Elysium. Valkyrie Elysium is like the complete opposite. Is like the complete yin to the yang of Horizon, where like everything in Horizon is actually like phenomenal except the combat, and then Valkyrie Elysium is like everything is mid to bad except the combat. Like combat's phenomenal, but everything else is kind of blech.
Wow.
so in a weird sort of twist, like, and the thing is, I bought, played, and enjoyed both games for those reasons, but like personally, it's kind of like, this kind of goes back to like Metal Gear Rising. And it's not really an indie game because obviously it's a fucking Kojima game at a time when they still made Metal Gear games and stuff. Granted, it was made very quickly, but like the whole basis of the game is around parrying, and it feels great to fucking parry. so
it's not really like an
because the game is
game,
short. Yeah, well, the game is short, so I'm thinking, and I haven't even played it yet, but Sifu kind of feels like the indie game that sort of really is all about sort of the combat. But it's more than, Sifu is more than about pairing. There is like finesse and other stuff to the combat as well. And they have this whole aging system where like when you die, you age, and you basically try to have to beat the game before you age out of existence. I
was trying to think of what do you remember the name of that game that looks like a Morbius comic?
Sable.
Mobius? Sable. One of my favorite things is like a exploration, kind of like just exploring a place that looks interesting, and like Sable sort of hit that spot.
It kind of scratches that itch.
Well, it's not that I really have a complaint about Sable.
I kind of do.
Well, there's no something doesn't land in that game, and I don't want to say it's the lack of combat because
it's mobility.
Is it mobility that just
it's generally how your character slow they move, and sort of like how weighted they feel running and climbing.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
If they were a little bit quicker, if they climbed a little bit faster, if the control was a little bit snappier, I think it would have gone over better. Like for me, I still think the game's really good. I actually still think it's a cool game.
Yeah, the game's awesome. I was thinking maybe it's just like the lack of like, I guess, enemies, or it's not even that there isn't combat. Like
I think it's a lack of encounters. There is a lot of, and I mean, but that almost feels like betrayal to like it's sort of setting to have like constant like engagement with things all the time. But like that's a weird balancing act of like, I want to make an atmospheric, moody game that is sort of desolate, but does going all the way in on that, does that create a sort of empty feeling with the game because you're not doing much, or like you spend a long time just climbing a wall where there's not much up there.
Right. And when you find like the area where it looks like giant monsters have roamed and stuff, I found myself going like, fuck, it'd be cool if that, even if it weren't like attacking you. It's not that I need combat.
Yeah, like what if you just saw one just jump out of the sand and just
right,
like,
or like a little bit of like racing or like something, that just kind of like.
Yeah, I don't want to be too down because again, I still think Sable is actually a really cool game.
It's wonderful.
You really should check it out. But I believe Sable is one of those like this is like a one dude venture, or like
that would explain a lot.
So I think it's a one dude venture. It might be more, but like very small. Like people just, it kind of like all these things that are like would have been really cool. Kind of would have needed like at least like a small team.
Right. Yeah, so, that makes sense. I mean, and the art alone was probably super hard to pull off alone.
Yeah, so
in terms of like single mechanics that define an indie game, that will drag me in, I can't think of a single mechanic that like I can't think of an indie game that dragged me in with it just the single mechanic. Usually indie games drag me in for from art style, or like they'll have music that they, kind of underpin, like
Yeah.
Limbo, I think
Mm.
was one of them, where it was just
Yeah.
like the art
Like,
style, and it's
what
not
is
a,
this? Yeah.
it really sort of drew me in. And I don't know, I can't think of a single particular game where I was immediately like, the gameplay loop is the thing drawing me in.
Yeah, there's a lot of indie games that sort of like they go off of bouncing mechanics or like hitting off of things like Celeste, Messenger, shit like that comes to mind. You have air
Mm.
dashes and like head bopping off of stuff or like bouncing off of stuff from a hit. And they basically build whole game mechanics around something that was not really even intended in an old 8-bit, 16-bit era days. But like it's a mechanic speedrunners can definitely use and do use, right? But
Oh,
it's not
right.
something that
Okay.
like was consciously designed back in the day. But now indie devs like take this one little weird little mechanic like head bopping or getting a little boost off of jumping off an enemy's head and make a whole game around it, right? Um,
Right. I mean, now I feel like, especially with anything that looks like it's 16-bit, oftentimes the nostalgia goes through to the specific game mechanic that you get from a 16-bit game. Like the movement or the platforming, of like, because 3D platforming doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't hit the same as a 2D platformer in some ways. 2D platformers are probably faster. That might be a
yeah.
reason.
Hmm.
Um, there's almost a rhythm mechanic to 2D
Hmm.
platformers, old school
Correct.
2D
Yeah.
platforms. And so, like, an indie platformer that comes out today, done 2D, will probably lean into that rhythm aspect, or they'll be like, oh, the speed is the point. Super Meat
Yeah,
Boy,
and,
that
and
kind of
and
thing.
and I think that's very cool. I don't want to dissuade that, but I think it
Yeah,
is very
yeah.
hard to base a full game around some like because they get really like enamored with their mechanics, like
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this one. And then sometimes I'm like, does this hold up for a whole game, even if it's a short game? Um, I think there is a sort of danger in sort of like okay, like an example would be like say take a like a retail game like Rayman Legends, Rayman Origins, and they have these rhythm platformer levels, right? Where you're like
Hmm.
it plays like a DM, licensed song, and all the like movement is timed to the song. It's like one of them was like a Black Betty level, right? So like like wham like clapping, would you be jumping or bopping or something or sliding or something, right? Everything is
Right.
in tune to the song, and that's really cool, but I don't know that you could base a whole game because the game what not that the whole game wasn't that, and I think it would be very difficult.
I mean,
Not difficult,
Hi-Fi Rush
just
sort of did that, where the
right,
combat and
kind
everything
of.
is based
But it's
around it.
like not everything is just like playing a level to like the rhythm of one song, and it's very cool. But they're good as sort of like an in between level or a break, a variety refresh. It's not you know what I mean, like.
Oh,
I,
yeah, no,
Sometimes I think indie games where it's like, oh, we really like this one mechanic, so we're going to make a whole game based around this mechanic. I'm like, does that mechanic hold up for 5 hours?
and then it's exhausting. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of games that, like, if they were just a little bit longer, they probably would have sucked. Journey.
Mm, right.
If Journey was just if
Journey's actually a pretty good example. Like even
yeah,
Flower, and I love Flower. Flower's
I
probably,
mean,
but by the time you get to the end, you're like, I'm done.
right, and like I would almost argue a game we both loved, Rhyme.
Hmm.
If it was a little bit longer, we might not have loved it as much.
Rhyme would have needed something more,
Yeah, it
like
would have had to it would have had to evolve somehow. But that's a cool question. I kind of like that. I'm gonna have to think about indie games specifically, that have
mhm.
hooked me based entirely around just a single mechanic. But to end our side quest episode, we should acknowledge the news that dropped out of nowhere like a goddamn sledgehammer is that the UK blocked that Microsoft Activision deal at the last moment. And some people, I don't know who, would probably say that it was the result of a fucking bribe.
Oh, of
Like,
course
it
it was. I
sure
mean,
seems like it was.
yeah,
Uh,
it's either a bribe or they're really that stupid because basically the reason that was blocked was because they said it would create
cloud
an
gaming.
unfair monopoly in cloud gaming. cloud gaming. What the fuck does this have to do with cloud gaming? It's like Microsoft has cloud. Like Activision doesn't own cloud servers, to my knowledge. Maybe they do through Demonware, but like, what are they fucking talking about? Like,
it has to be. It's either if it's an honest thing, it's some old dude who doesn't actually understand how gaming works, and he just bought into whatever the fuck the Sony lawyer was saying.
yeah.
But if not, I just want to know what they're waiting for Microsoft to offer them.
Well, apparently they want Microsoft. This is a funny thing. Michael Pachter, remember him? He's apparently saying like the thing is they'll rescind the block if Microsoft agrees to never raise Game Pass prices.
What the fuck?
What? I'm like, okay, awesome.
Like, I mean, that's great for us, I guess.
I don't know how these. The thing is, I don't even know how these fucking connect.
Yeah, how is that a reasonable?
How is it a reasonable thing to block the deal on, and how is this a reason of like how does make sure Game Pass doesn't go up in price? Is there saying like we want to make sure you don't? Maybe in their head they're thinking Microsoft will have a monopoly on cloud gaming, so we got to make sure that if they're going to have so much of the market on cloud gaming, they have to guarantee that they will never raise prices so other people can make other cloud gaming services and compete. I guess I don't know. Like, honestly, none of this makes sense. To me, it just smells of just like Sony just started bribing the shit out of people.
It definitely, that's what I
block them for whatever. They're appealing. It's going to go to appeals. People think it's over and done. It's like, no, it's just going to get dragged out longer.
Yeah,
like
nothing is over and done when that much.
It looked like we were just about done with this, maybe, and now it's looking like, well, this is going to get dragged out for this could potentially get dragged out for a very long time.
Ugh.
Because it'll go through like an appeals court, process or whatever. So,
another day in dumb.
It's all dumb. It's all dumb. It's all stupid, and like Sony has like absolutely nothing to even worry about, like at all.
I mean, I'm sure they have something to worry about because they want all the money in the world, but they don't have a leg to stand on in this instance. Especially when it comes out that they're bribing people specifically to screw Xbox.
Well, I mean, it's like I don't even know how to even address the whole thing. Well, they'll have a monopoly because again, they already have all the cloud servers. Activision isn't a cloud gaming company necessarily, and two, doesn't fucking Amazon have a ton of fucking cloud servers and shit? Like,
yeah,
Sony invested billions of dollars into its own cloud gaming infrastructure, if I'm not mistaken, at some point recently too, like a few years back. I don't know. This is dumb. It's all dumb. So we'll let the courts shake out, but it's like it all just seems dumb to us from here.
Waste of time. Yeah, well, somebody's getting paid, so I guess it's not a waste of time for them.
Well, yeah,
but
very good for the lawyers.
Thank you, TheSchmidtOne, for your request. That was a great question, and I guess thanks Sony for the little bit of news.
Yeah, I guess. But yes,
I'm talking about.
I want the defensive, offensive defensive is me. Like my little gaming hook is like you give me a defensive mechanic that's sort of offensive or as heavy like some sort of heavy countering based system. Love it because I love being able to do more than just roll away, which is fine. Horizon. But I love being able to counter back or do like perfect pairing. Feels great when it happens. Feels great in RE4. They added it to remake, right?
Yeah.
They added it to remake, and boy, does it feel good.
A perfect parry feels real good.
Wow, because it feels real good, and then you immediately mash the kick button, and it's like, yeah, it's like this great, just like fuck you too moment.
And I think that's really all that we want in life is a fuck you too moment. We just need a win. We're the generation that's on our 5th or 6th once in a lifetime fuck you from the universe.
Yeah.
We're due a win. All right, thank you guys. We'll catch you next time.
Later, dudes.